Hey, welcome back. So, things are gonna be a little different this time around because I'm still figuring out how I want to do this. Instead of just reading fully off of my notes, I decided to not write a script. Why? Honestly, I've been thinking about it, and even if I go through beat by beat, there's still going to be things I'm missing. I don't really feel like I am spoiling the story if I talk more in depth. Not to mention, I cover one genre, and those genres always end the same. The couple ends up together. I will be not quite going over every single bit, but a lot more than I have been. Today, we are covering the story of The Secret Lives of Country Gentlemen by K.J. Charles. And let me just tell you, this has been my first historical read I've read. Obviously, that was a bit redundant, but whatever, that happens. And I have to say, I was so entertained by the sheer vocabulary that I was stopping, Googling words, and then continuing on. So I have a feeling not only am I going to be picking up random words throughout my life now and throwing them in random modern contexts, but I now just want to read more historical romances. And luckily, this author happens to have a lot. They are K.J. Charles. They have 20 years of experience in British publishing as an editor, and then they became a historical romance novelist. They apparently live next to a magpie haunted London park with a supportive husband, two teenagers, and a cat with a violent history. I'll give you a brief overview of the characters. You have Gareth, who in the first chapter and throughout the book is called London because, shockingly, he lives in London. And then you have Kent, who we don't actually learn who Kent is in the first chapter, and I don't really think until maybe chapter 3 or 4, which makes sense because you don't really see him again until chapter 3 or 4. Gareth or London, is essentially I think they called him secretary or a scribe or something. I don't quite remember because all of it, the very first chapters of books, I'm usually just like, all right, I need to see if I'm going to enjoy this, get through the first chapter or two. He was a secretary for his uncle, who is a lawyer, and his cousin, who is also a lawyer. We find out that they want to keep in touch because Kent has to leave. He has to go back to, Kent. And he actually wants to keep in touch with London. They've been kind of intimate, they've been hooking up the entire week. I don't know about you, but I've never thought yes, I'm going to repeatedly be with this person for a full week. It is obviously just a fling. I don't think that's how that works. At some point you just gotta admit there's chemistry there, but it is London during, I think, the Napoleon Wars, whatever. London ends up pretty much denying this because he has commitment issues, which I understand. Well, I think it's more abandonment issues, not so much commitment issues. Anyway, that's pretty much the first chapter. Our main characters are Gareth / London, and then we have Kent. I'm gonna be honest, when I was writing my notes, I still had the full intention of writing a script, so things might be a little bit messy. But hey, I'm a bit messy. That's just how it goes. Let's actually get into the story, shall we? Gareth has just inherited a title because his father finally died in a home where he meets his aunt and / mistress / I guess technically stepmother, Catherine Bull, and her niece, his half-sister, Cecile. His father left them absolutely nothing. And we see that Garrett's actually rather kind, as he tells them not only can they stay for as long as they like, but he'll also put a portion for Cecile so that she can marry and generally not be completely over. She had no idea she even had a half-sibling until the will was read. His father had fully forgotten him. Which, ouch, that has to suck. Not only did his father not tell them about them at all, when he was younger, he would try to write to his father. And his father just never responded. And we're not really ever told why either. It's the crazy part. like, I'll go ahead and spoil that. We are not told why he never gets in contact with his son, and the fact that he sent his son off right when his mother died to his brother, who his brother did not want to raise this child at all. It was just messy. Man's got a messy history, and you'll only see it gets even more extreme. I'm not going to tell you every time I swap to a chapter in my notes, because again, I feel like that would be repetitive, so I'm just going to go on a long spiel and cut out the dead air. I will admit, I don't know if this is a historical writing thing or if this is a KJ Charles thing, but I will admit I was a little lost in pacing in the very beginning. I got kind of a better idea of it as I read on. But man, at first I was like, wait, why is he outside now? Why is he taking a walk at night? I'm so confused. Where are we? Anyway, he happens to see a robbery basically go on, I guess. Again, I'm not entirely sure what was going on because I was lost. But I will put that more on me than the actual story because it really didn't interfere with my enjoyment. He is a witness and he sees someone that could either be a young boy, as they're dressed in like pants and a shirt and basically could be a young boy, or a woman in men's clothing. Anyway, he gets called upon trial because they believe it is a Sophia Doomsday, which I have to just say is a badass last name. She went to go around, yes, I'm Doomsday. Nah, she was the one that may or may not have been leading the smugglers. Just as he was about to give his witness testimony, guess who strolls in? Kent, aka, we learn, Joshua Doomsday. Gareth is entirely gobsmacked at the fact that he's there, let alone the fact that, well, they haven't seen each other for, I think, it's maybe been a month or so at this point, and he obviously had no idea what Kent did. They didn't really seem to talk a whole lot about their jobs when they were together, which I get it. Anyway, this leads him to Kent to basically say, no, this good man must be mistaken, in fact. He didn't see Sophia there. Right, Gareth. Of course, this makes the man completely just dumbfounded and not knowing what to do, and he recants his witness count, which, this is a problem, something I didn't mention. Cecilia is sweet on a revenue man, I think is what they call them, which are kind of in charge of trying to find these smugglers because they're at war with France and they're smuggling things to and from France, which yada yada, patriotism, whatever, don't care. I mean, I care because it's part of the story, but you know. Anyway, which means because Gareth has pulled back his testimony. This means basically, what was his name? I want to say it was David, but I don't think David is right. I'm just gonna say Cecilia's beau, or whatever you want to say. Pretty much has mud on his face now because the entire thing falls through, and that was their one chance to get a doomsday hanging, essentially. Because this is the old days, and if you're caught smuggling or theft, you either lose a hand or you get hanged, whatever. I don't know, English is weird, don't blame me. Anyway, Josh had actually tried to talk to Gareth about the case before he went even into the hearing. And my god, Gareth has the highest of egos. Like, they went from being together and all happy to Gareth basically looking down upon this man as much as physically possible. He's like, oh, you're a smuggler. Oh my god, you're trash. And I'm just like, is this a romance? Like, holy I mean, I get he's now, which didn't even mention this, the land and title that Gareth inherited makes him a baronet, which I don't know what the difference from a baron and a baronet. Whatever. They're titles. And my cats are going crazy. I get it. He's a baronet. He can't really be seen hanging around smugglers, and the fact that he was hooking up with a smuggler probably, I guess, would hurt his ego some. I don't know. It ain't me. I couldn't care less. But yes, they have a incredibly big falling out because Gareth essentially feels like Josh almost blackmailed, well, no, pretty much blackmailed him into silence, because if he had gone through with his uh, testimony, he was afraid that Josh was going to turn around and out him as being gay. Which I don't see how that would stop anything. I guess technically that would make him a liar because he's not said it, and because of the time, it could maybe cast some doubt on his words, because who's to say he's not been compromised and they're not blackmailing him to say these things. I guess, but even then, I don't think that would have saved his sister. It would have just ruined him. So we move on. It's been like a day or 2 or 3, I don't really remember, from the trial. And Cecile gets jumped by a large man and a radish looking man. Not radish. Imagine a dude with a red face and hair just sticking straight up. A ratish looking man. Gareth decides this is Doomsday's and goes to their alehouse and demands answers. This is where we also learn a little bit about Ma, who's kind of still the leader, but Josh is the one that kind of does most of the planning and bossing around. Ma is the one you don't cross. And Ma isn't so much offended by this assumption, but she states that she wants whomever did it dealt with. Because again, they don't know if maybe it was a Doomsday guy or two who, took things into their own hands when they shouldn't have. It's a possibility. But she also points out that she's known that girl since she was a child and has cared for her greatly, while her father didn't, essentially. So it was unlikely and almost impossible to say that she was the one in charge of that hit, essentially, or that scaring. Josh and Gareth seem to come to a better understanding as Ma basically forces them to go off to the corner and talk. It's clear that both of them aren't happy how things were ended in London, which it was actually kind of nice on how they're splitting up and them coming together and talking was. It wasn't necessarily an instant oh, okay, we're better now, cool. It was much more of a up, and then the other one saying up. It was just a lot more neutral, I guess. I don't know. I'm a sucker for when people are adults in adult stories, and I know it's weird. Missed me with that childish. Gareth is out for a walk, and he gets jumped by the brute and the rat of a man. Luckily, Josh is there in time to defend him. Gareth actually stands his ground instead of running when Josh tells him to. He actually ends up whacking the guys once or 5 times with his cane to help. Turns out to be some, I think this is their name, but I was just so into this book, I kept on forgetting to write chapter note. I think they were called Sweetwater, but my dyslexia kept on looking like Sweatwater, but I'm pretty sure Sweetwater fellows. They're led by a man named Nate. When they get back to the trench house, which is what Gareth's house is called, Josh orders 4 folks to watch the house. But the chapter ends with Josh taking Gareth out of the house for a talk. Nedget, I don't know if that's their name. I'm sorry. I thought I'd be better off with some English names, but then I realized old English names are weird. And Bowring are the goons that jumped Cecilia and now Gareth. So the pair talk. Gareth is paranoid about owing Josh, which is kind of understandable because he is a smuggling ring boss and a gang member, or I will probably censor that word I just said because I'm pretty sure YouTube doesn't like that word. He's a community group leader. But Josh is absolutely sure he wants nothing from Gareth. He's owed nothing, but instead wants to just spend time with him. Gareth also tells Josh that he's been looking at beetles because people have been made super sus about him because he's just wandering around the dikes and looking at basically abandoned churches, which are also spots where people, hide smuggled goods. So he's been putting his nose in business by complete accident, and this just makes Josh laugh, and they agree to go look at diving beetles and newts. It was super sweet. You could just tell that Josh really didn't want anything from him. He's not after his money. He's not after his title or anything. He's just dude, I just find you interesting. Let's just hang out. So sweet. I loved it. The pair have been bonding over beetles at this point. He did end up taking him to go find these beetles because Josh had actually grown up watching them, and he never really gave them any mind because when you're raised around something, it becomes normal. You're not raised about things, everything's fascinating. It's really sweet, but they start talking about smugglers and the war and the English and the French have going on. Of course, Gareth, the good old patriot, but Josh points out plainly when the French comes, the king won't send men for them, won't care that they're starving, and since no one can freely sell wool to the French, hence the free traders. I'm glad this is touched upon as wars are for rich men and the poor men pay for it. He really goes into the fact that you see disloyalty, he sees people just trying to live. I mean, what are they supposed to do? Just starve for how long this war goes on? It's not fair, and so smugglers aren't inherently bad people. Do they do bad things? Debatable, sure, I guess. But it's that, or people have nothing. I know what side I'd be on, to be quite frank. The pair have their beetle hunting day, and it's so damn sweet. They, of course, end up, together. But after they speak more about Gareth's father's money truly comes from, which was likely a speculation trading in free water with smugglers. But they agree to be together again. So it was very brought up how is your father getting all these investments and payments and everything? And speculation trading, you basically give money to the smugglers and be like, all right, I want you to buy these things and trade these things. Give me, my cut. It's not crazy. It's not bad. It's not great. But, again, I guess back then, it gets worse. Don't worry. It gets so much worse. Gareth is waiting for Josh to get back to him, but he's disturbed by a Bill Sweetwater. He's accusing Gareth of hiding something and mentions a man named Adam. Luckily, Graveyard and Flinty, Doomsday Lads, come in and usher the man out. I kind of like how or community group I need to start saying community group come feel like family rather than just a bunch of random bandits, which it makes sense they are technically considered a family, but they have Garrett's bath, which probably helps that Josh has mentioned them, but Josh has a job underway and it goes well, but his uncle Elijah is complaining about how he could do it better. Sophia, or Soph, apparently has a place set up all for Josh and Garrett to have their time together away. But she does express some worries since, Josh is a free trader and Gareth is a baronet. Which, I don't know what a baronet is, and I still haven't googled it because I don't really care. It might as well just be a baron. I don't know. Regardless, she still supports him in the end, so Sis knows that he's gay, doesn't really care, she's just happy he's there, happy he's happy, but is more worried about the titles. Alright, so I had to stop for a moment because my notes told me about something on page 160 to 161, and I wasn't actually sure what it was because I didn't put in my notes because I was going to be writing a script for this before I changed my mind. And I think I figured out what it was. This is said by Josh. And you reckon I look at you like that, like a lady of easy virtue? Sometimes, Gareth whispered. How's your virtue? Couldn't be easier. I don't know why. I said f***ing reeling. But it did. I just want to say, honestly, 160 to 161 was probably my favorite 2 pages. Just because I am a sucker for comedy during intimate scenes, I guess. I don't know, maybe I'm a clown, and I'm having so much fun censoring myself. Oh well, this is much more fun than reading a script, I have to say. They meet again. I don't remember why or when, but they end up together, and it was weirdly both romantic and funny. But in the end, Gareth learned something from Josh. You can't have something without asking for it. Which, makes sense. You can't just kind of rely on hopefully someone getting a hint. Essentially, he needs to take charge of his life and stop letting his family walk over him, which is technically something they both need to learn. So, Josh had talked to Nate. Another promise to leave Gareth alone. Then he had 2 fallings out, basically back to back with his uncle Elijah. However, at the end, he's overlooking his things and he notices the letter he first wrote to Gareth at what he wanted to talk to him before the trial was gone, and that he just sent his pissed off uncle out in a rage. This is where we start to see, oh no, he knows. Gareth comes back with a vengeance. Man's grown a full pair and throws his uncle out, who claims he owes him 10,000, I think it was guineas. I don't know what the currency was. It kept on swapping between gold, guineas, whatever. Things are shady, but that number seems crazy. Even his entire estate is not worth 10,000, apparently. So we learn why everyone's after Gareth's father's study / him. Essentially, what's happened is that Gareth's father and his uncle were essentially taking their currency and then sending it over to France, and essentially we're getting more back from gold. I don't quite know. Essentially, they're one of the people who have been incidentally funding the war on the French side. I'ma just say it that way because I am not a smart enough man to understand like trading in currencies to get more back. Obviously, the 10,000 have gone missing. No one knows where it's at. Gareth's father's dead, so he doesn't know. They can't ask him. They can't find the Adam dude. They have no idea where he's at. Nate nor Bill have any idea. Worse yet, Elijah finds them, Gareth and Josh, and threatens that they don't confess their relationship that he'll beat Goldie, aka Luke, and listens to Gareth talk about how he's supposed to help him learn about getting an education. Luke does the right thing and tries to go with Gareth. Like, basically, Goldie / Luke is essentially Elijah's son, who was just dropped off at the family because Elijah did some not so great things to Goldie's mother, and that's why he's there. Poor Goldie's entire life has just been trying to get his father's approval, because that's the only parent he has, and it has been kind of hinted throughout the story that Josh has been so occupied in running the gang that he kind of didn't try to step up for poor Goldie, to at least try to be a figure to look up to. If the two don't like admit their relationship and tell him where the money is, he's going to basically beat Goldie, which granted, the man's been beating the boy this entire story. We just never really get to see it, thank God. But Luke does the right thing and tries to go with Gareth. Elijah straight up tries to stab his own kid to death. Like, I'm not kidding. This man doesn't just strike him. He pulls a knife out and tries to, for what it sounds like, stab over his shoulder to like his chest, but the kid dodges in time and gets like his cheek sliced like wide open. Luckily, it's not deadly, and I didn't mention this earlier, but there's other Doomsdays who are watching because Elijah said, oh, I'm gonna go put Josh in the ground, come watch it, community group problems, Luckily, everyone that's watching and Josh freak the fuck out rightfully and completely pretty much put him in the ground almost. Beats the ever-living hell out of him. Luke is safe before they take him to the trench house. They take him obviously to Ma Doomsday, and she is irate, but she manages to stitch him up, so he's fine. But the pair has a falling out because Josh took way too much on his plate and didn't even tell Gareth about the letter, didn't tell him about the possible blackmailing, and you can just tell that Gareth is like, I might not know your lifestyle fully, but you need to stop handling me with kids' gloves. You need to let me have a chance to take some of the off of your plate, which is hard for Josh. Essentially, since his father, older brother, and I think an uncle ended up dying in a boat accident or something like that. I think it was a full-on shipwreck. I don't quite remember. He's essentially had to step up as the lead man. I don't remember. I think it was front man or something. Sorry, my cat apparently sees something and it upsets her. Anyway, he's had to step up because Elijah was originally the leader, but he's horrible at it, kept getting things messed up, and just too much of a brute. So he's not used to having the option to hand things off. Or at least he thinks he doesn't have that option. I can kind of see Gareth's side, but at the same time, he's so sheltered. I also see why Josh tries to, solve it all. Either way, they have a small falling out. Gareth has kept his big boy hands on, as Lionel, his cousin, talked to church about his sister, basically calling her easy and too excitable. Luckily, he's backed up by the Doomsday Boys and Sophia. They even call Gareth a marshman, which essentially means he is a part of the town. He belongs there. He's one of them. But calls Lionel an outmarsh, which means he's an outsider. He's not welcomed. He's not protected. He is not of them. Which even turns the few nobles in this town, pretty much against him because he's outmarsh. He's not one of them. And the entire chapter was so awesome to see Gareth be like, nah, we're done. We're done with this crap. I'm gonna talk down to you in the most, noble way possible. But that part ends with, again, Josh and Gareth needing to talk. They agree. My new favorite word is in this chapter. It's hobbitahoy. It's probably not pronounced right. I read that and I just kept on saying that throughout my shift. Just hobbitahoy. I'll put up on the screen what it actually means and maybe throw up a pronunciation guide. Either way, it made me giggle. So the clues are coming in, but one thing is missing, or rather two things. Adam Drake and the guineas. Apparently it's guineas they're looking for. Which thanks they think of guinea fowls, but whatever. Though they can go nowhere now it's late, Gareth convinces Josh to sleep in his room, for safety reasons, of course. He tries to warn Catherine about this, but she knows the truth and lets him know it's no bother. Essentially, she's like, look, you've been kind to me and Cecilia and have done nothing but do best by us. Go be with your man. Now, this is the Elijah's dead. Murdered by a clean break of his neck. Now they need to figure out the who and why, because it wasn't any of the Doomsdays. Because at this point, he had been excommunicated. He had basically been dressed down after the whole Goldie incident. Which I'm shocked I didn't add that in my notes. But yeah, he had been basically thoroughly thrown out. Which was such a good scene, I have to say. This author can do dressing downs so well. Oh, hello. That's, again, Kitty. They're very active today. Probably because it's my first day back from working my weekend shift. Anyway, they believe Elijah was killed with something doing with Henry, because they have a weird witness that says he was with people, or with at least one person that he could easily identify. So they find out it was Bill Sweetwater that had killed Elijah due to him leading them on a wild goose chase of the lost money. This, of course, brings more issues now that Henry and Lionel are gone. But so is Gareth, and no one knows who took him. When I said this amped up to a 10 out of nowhere, I could not put this book down in any sense of the word. Those damn idiots think Gareth still has the money and knows where it is. He swears he doesn't because he doesn't. He doesn't know anything where this money could be, where Adam could be. At this point, they assume that Adam was either killed somehow by someone and the money's lost, or Adam just straight up took the money and left because it turns out he wasn't very close to his wife. There was no love lost if he just disappeared. So they think the man took it and ran, or he got and someone else has the money. Basically, it's a wash for them. But they don't care. They tie him up to the sea wall and basically is going to let the tide drown him. But since he won't tell him where it is because he doesn't know where it is, they go to find his sister so that they can torture her as he listens to her screams while he drowns. Oh, apparently I'm supposed to reread chapter 24. So we're going to do that real quick. because these chapters aren't too long. Oh yeah, now I know. Now I know. I didn't have to read the whole chapter. There's just one part. Josh, no more time, none at all. He stepped forward, guarding Gareth. Figures plodding up the path that led to the top of the wall. Bill Sweetwater had a pistol in one hand and a knife in another. Behind him, Lionel Inglis, which is their last name, I forgot to mention that, was soaked from head to foot and streaked with mud. Fell into a dike, lawyer? Josh inquired. Lionel swore at him. Sweetwater's expression hardened as he looked around. Bow ring? Cleared off, Josh said. Just you and me, Bill. Sweetwater snarled. Josh pulled his knives from their sheaths, settling them in his hands. He and Bill were both slightly crouched, watching each other like dogs ready to spring. Except Josh's breeches were soaked and heavy, and his waterlogged boots sloshed when he moved, and his legs felt like lead. It didn't matter. Bill had tied Gareth up to the wall, and Josh would kill him with one hand behind his back if he had to. Looks like 2 against 1 to me, Bill said. You sure you want to do this, Josh? I put a bullet in your head. What's to stop me from carving your boyfriend up till he tells me where the guineas are? I've men all over the marsh looking for you. Fire that pistol and you'll have minutes to live. And you'll be dead. Josh grinned at him. Unless you miss. Talking of misses, what happened to your plans for Miss Cecilia? Didn't go so well. Bill swore at him, from which Josh gathered that he'd seen the welcome awaiting at the trench house and decided not to try his luck. Lionel said, For God's sake, do something. He sounded like his voice was cracking, and the Martian knight could do that. Run, Josh suggested, both of you. Nate's on his way, and he's an angry man. You've lost Bill. Get off Marsh now, and you might save your skin. Bill shook his head and raised the pistol, leveling it directly at Josh. Not without the money. Tell me where it is. Last warning, Josh. Moonlight flared off Josh's blade as he turned it. That a promise? I've heard enough talk. No! A croak sounded from Gareth behind him. Don't shoot, Mr. Sweetwater. Please. I'll tell you where the money is if you don't shoot. Hurt him and you'll never see it. I told you, Lionel said. I told you he knew. Kill the other one and make him say it. I didn't tell you when you tied me up to drown, Gareth said. If you hurt a hair on Josh's head, I won't say another word. Wanna bet? I would, Josh said. He didn't know what Gareth was up to. He'd back him to the hilt anyway. Right, obstinate fellow. The new squire. I know where the money is, Gareth sounded raw and desperate. Josh might have believed him if he hadn't known better. It's not fair. I'll tell you as long as you don't hurt Josh. And if you promise not to give any of it to Lionel. Not a penny, you shit, Gareth said with feeling. With feeling. You and your father started this over money you stole in the first place. I hate you both. I hope you hang. Promise me, Mr. Sweetwater. Take every penny and leave him nothing. Lionel gaped in horror. Good idea, Josh said. Cut him out. No skin off my nose, Bill said. No. Lionel's mouth was working. No, it's my money. You promise. Bill grinned like a dog. Piss off, lawyer. We said halves. Shut your face. Where is it, Sir Gareth? You'll make sure Lionel gets nothing? Gareth demanded. Bill shrugged. Kill him if you want. I can put a ball in his head just as easy as Josh's. Up to you. Lionel's face convulsed. What? No, Gareth. Yes, Gareth said. Do that. Kill him. Lionel screamed as he lunged, grabbing the pistol. Bill wrenched his arm away. The 2 men struggled for a second, and the gun went off with a deafening report. Josh! Gareth shrieked out the name, and then somehow, on his feet, legs wobbling like a newborn calf, he lunged. Apparently unaware, Josh had a sodding, razor-sharp knife in each hand. Josh dropped one like a hot coal and caught his liver with the hand that freed. Pulling him in and holding the other blade away. Well, I swear I can read. It's alright, I'm alright. He was. Lionel wasn't. Lionel had slid down to his knees, face incredulous, a dark stain spreading across his chest. His lips worked soundlessly as he fell forward. That's what I want to read, because fuck Lionel. I will probably edit that down a little bit so you don't have to hear my reading, because I'll admit I cannot read, which is why I don't want to do scripts anymore. Anyway, It was intense. I loved it. I was just, every page, just, I gotta go more, I gotta learn more. And honestly, what happens next is, of course, the gunshot does alert people. And next thing you know, you hear owls hooting throughout the distance, which I guess is the family's call sign of, like, I hear you, I'm coming, I hear you, we're this far away. And Bill is just freaking out because he knows what that means. He knows exactly what that means. Then suddenly, all the Doomsdays are there, Nate is there, and he is just looking pissed. This is his brother went against his word. Bill tries to get his brother's people, to turn on him, be like, oh, Nate's gone soft because his bitch is breeding, which is such a fucking phrase. Anyway, we don't get to see what happens to him, but it's very much implied that he's no longer a problem, both to the other Sweetwaters and to the Doomsdays. Things are settled and they're happy with their comfortable lives. I don't think they necessarily end up like living together because, again, Josh is still a smuggler at the end, and while Gareth is still a baronet. They end up quote unquote married by having little grass wings placed on each other. It is just, oh, it's so sweet. I loved it. 10 out of 10. That's not actually the score, but I love this book so much. It was so sweet. You have to read it. And I will just warn you now, I will not become a KJ Charles channel, but like, I already have the second in the Doomsday saga, because I guess the Doomsday family is just part of a larger saga that they're doing. Different characters in the second one. But I think it's like How to Seduce a Scoundrel or something like that. I won't say that's going to be the next book, but it's likely to be the next book that I will review, because it was just, I'm hooked on their writing and I'm hooked on the language involved. So yeah, it might not be the next one, it might be. I do have a few other books to choose from, not necessarily from them, but in general. Anyway, let's get into the nitty gritty of the actual review itself. Anyway, let's get into the ranking of the review, I should say. So, for characters, easily 10. I loved every single character that was brought up, even the ones I hated, that I was so happy to see justice brought to. It was just 10 out of 10 on the characters. No notes. Loved every single one, which I can't believe I forgot to mention this. But Josh / Kent is actually mixed race. His granddad is a freed African American slave who ended up actually coming over to England. So technically, his mom was white, or his grandma was white. I believe we actually don't learn anything about his mom. I don't think. Anyway, he actually is mixed race. I didn't think about mentioning that because, well, it is mentioned in the story. It's not necessarily what I would say is a plot point, though Elijah does absolutely bring up some shitty remarks, which, granted, last time it was mentioned in the book that when he brought up those remarks, the grandfather's still around, and he apparently knocked the man flat out. This like older gentleman was able to just one-shot this man onto the ground, and he never said shit again. Appreciate that. Made me happy. But he is a part of the story, and it was nice hearing about him, and the fact that he apparently has a Georgia accent. So just imagine a Georgian accent saying some fancy, weird, well, I say fancy, but more like low country English words. The idea was nice. I liked it. Anyway, atmosphere 10. As someone who's never really read a story that took place in any part of England, because I don't know, it's just not really a setting I've ever really thought about reading about. It was kind of nice. You got a good idea of what the land was like, the people were like, the culture was like. So a 10, easily 10. Writing, this is no shock. 10. While there's obviously older words, and I did have to Google some just out of my own curiosity, though context clues were typically enough, I loved the writing. Even if I was confused by the pacing some, I'm going to probably mark that more as it being historical rather than it being bad. Because again, I messed up a few times figuring out where we were at, but that didn't stop me from enjoying the book. Plot, 10, easily. I loved every single twist. I loved every single turn. I loved it. Intrigue, 10. I just could not put this book down. I didn't want to put this book down. The amount of times I got annoyed because I had to, oh my god. Just 10 out of 10. Logic, I put as a 9, which is still a pretty good score. But I did feel like there were some points where I'm just like, this seems like a leap. This seems like, how is there nothing on paper about this? Which I get it. You shouldn't write down your crimes. That kind of is what gets people most caught. But it would have been nice as just a reader to have a little bit more like solid connections. Because a lot of it did feel like, is this the case? But again, it's a 9. It wasn't that big of a deal. And enjoyment, do you really gotta ask? 10. I loved this story. So much so that I'm so glad I actually... This wasn't the first book of KJ Charles I bought. I actually bought the How to Seduce a Scoundrel first, but decided to read this one first because technically it's the first of the saga. And I am so glad because this book was so good. And so, the rating is, to no one's shock, especially not mine, a 9.86, which ties it to the boyfriend subscription. I'm starting to realize I am just super easy to please because so many of mine have been 5 stars, other than Saint, which is fine because we don't need to talk about Saint ever again in my life. But maybe I just have good taste as that one time, you know. So, I hope you enjoyed this kind of new edition or new version of my reviews. I'm not even gonna lie, been very distracted this weekend due to a certain online beef going on between 2 people, one of which I absolutely despise, so I'm happy someone is thrashing him, thoroughly so. But all I have to say is, you probably should stay away from a minor for a while. Anyway, goodbye. Have a good one, and see you next week. Bye.